We're very blessed this morning to have you here today, and I know that the good book teaches to give honor to whom honor is due, and certainly it says to honor your mother and your father. So you have honored your mothers, many of you have, by being here today with them in worship, and you just can't imagine how good that makes you feel, and it does. We're blessed to have you with us. Some of you have driven a good ways. I know Ron Ransom's all the way from Huntsville, Alabama, and his mother, Sister Vera, is here, along with the rest of that good family. And our son John drove up from Mount Juliet, and perhaps others of you that far or more, but you are here to give honor and encouragement, and it means a lot. We're glad all of us have that ability this special day, but every day a special day of appreciation for our mothers, and if they're living, a special blessing. If they've passed on, that also is a very precious memory, as Coach Barry Bryant said years ago, doing a commercial for a telephone company, asking them to call their mother, and he didn't know that the mic was still live, and he commented after the commercial was over, he said, "I sure wished I could call my mother. She had passed." So we are thankful for our blessings. This morning we want to think about a virtuous mother, sort of being in season. The Bible says to preach in season, and that might be a good in-season thought this morning about a virtuous mother. I've been conducting funerals for over 50 years. Many times through those years, when a Christian lady or a God-fearing mother or grandmother has passed away, some of the family has asked, "Would you please share the 31st chapter of Proverbs about that virtuous mother in regard to my mother or granny or mama, because those verses just describe her so well. Would you do that?" And I, of course, I'm always honored to try to fulfill that request because I understand where they're coming from. Mothers have a great influence upon our lives. For some people, the greatest of influence, some of you here today would say, probably came from your mother. We fathers are sort of like the guy that said he wished some professional ball player would for one time look at the camera and say, "Hi, Dad." They don't ever say, "Hi, Dad," you know. We cease to exist, but it's always, "Hi, Mom." Okay. Very special, and they have that place. And from our mothers, we gained a lot of our thinking through youth. A lot of our values came from our mother's teachings. Our self-esteem, a lot of that came from our mothers. I guess my father was a greater influence in my life, I think, than my mother, but I know that mothers have a great influence. Abraham Lincoln, my favorite president of all, said, "All that I have, all that I am, and all that I'll ever be, I owe to my angel mother." What a statement. You know, it's that great entertainer, maybe the greatest entertainer that has existed, Elvis Presley. That would be my vote. It might not be your vote. But a voice and of entertainment all started by wanting to make a record for his mama. So he pulled in the Sun Records in Memphis, and that's how the legend began. If his wanting to please his mother had not meant so much, he might have still be driving that truck, you know. So mothers have had a great influence. A little bit of background for Proverbs 31, where this statement question is raised, who can find a virtuous woman or mother? She definitely is a mother in this text. The background is chapter 31 and verse 1 says that these are the words of King Lemuel and the prophecy that his mother taught him. Who is King Lemuel? I thought Solomon wrote the book of Proverbs. Well, that is believed to be true. Lemuel may have been a pet name or a nickname that his mama gave to him, is what many scholars believe. His mother, Solomon's mother, was Bathsheba. Yes, same one. Yeah, she was the mother of Solomon. We know that. And she may have had sort of a pet name for him and called him Lemuel. But the last two chapters may have been written by someone else besides Solomon. Doesn't matter. It's part of the Word of God, and it contains some great truth. This chapter 31 of Proverbs is very unique, as well as the wisdom within it. These last verses, 10 through 31, are written in a style that is amazing. The writer, probably Solomon in all of his wisdom, he was the wisest man in the world. He begins in verse 10 through 31, and each verse is the beginning of the next Hebrew letter. Begins with the next Hebrew letter in consecutive order. The Old Testament is written in Hebrew, but that's amazing that someone in their writing could take the letters of the alphabet, of the Hebrew alphabet, and begin this brilliant discussion about a virtuous mother. In the last part of this description, verses 28 through 31, notice 3 times that the word praise is found. That's what I wanted to key in on this morning. Why is she worthy of praise? Look at verse 28 of Proverbs 31. Her children will rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. So the virtuous mother is praised by her husband. Next verse, 29. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. 30. Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. There's the second time we see this word used in these verses. And then the last verse says, give her the fruits of her hands and let her own works praise her in the gates. So 3 times, verses 28 through 31, the writer described this virtuous mother as being worthy of praise. Now we're going to look and ask ourselves from the context of the Proverbs 31, why is she worthy of praise? What is there about the virtuous mother that, yes, her husband praises her and her children praise her, and she has that effect upon others? Number one, I think our text is very obvious in the fact that she is a very precious, rare commodity. A virtuous mother. Who can find a virtuous mother suggesting the question that we're going to need to do a little searching maybe, but I know we can find many virtuous mothers in this audience today and throughout the land, but they are very, very precious. I think that's first of all what Solomon is saying, they're priceless. In fact, he went ahead to say, verse 10 of chapter 31, who can find a virtuous mother? For her price is far above rubies. Verse 10. Her price is far above rubies. A ruby is a precious stone. It's my birthstone. All of us July people, that's our birthstone, is the ruby. And it's precious and it's beautiful. And it's, yet a virtuous mother is worth more. Well, far above rubies. Far, whatever a ruby is worth, they're very valuable, precious stone, gem. And the virtuous mother, she's far above. So she's priceless. She's a very special person in our life because usually, now I know that not all mothers are good, and some are evil, and some are worldly, and some are mean in the wrong way. And we understand that. It's sad but true. And I know none of you, I'm sure, and prayerfully has been through that heartbreak. But anyway, it can happen, and it does happen in a world of evil. But this virtuous mother, her price, she's priceless because she is so good. Her goodness is that she, like most mothers, is willing to sacrifice for her family. And I'll not tell you my tearjerker story or two for the sake of some of you back there who said, don't tell that about dividing the pie into 6 pieces and Mama don't want a piece because she doesn't want any pie. Don't tell that, so I won't tell it, okay? I came pretty close to it, but many of us have had a mother like that who would need a new dress, but we got a baseball glove instead, you know. She needed the dress, we got the baseball glove. The sacrifices that she would always eat the backbone of the chicken back when they cut them up that way. And my mom would eat. That backbone's the best part of it. Mama, there's not any meat on the backbone of the chicken. Well, that's what she wanted. So they make sacrifices, and that's why they are so. Most people are for themselves. It seems like sort of like that old song, "Dogs and Children and Watermelon Wine." Tom T. Hall wrote about. He said, women folk, they only talk about themselves when men folk are not around. Well, too many of us talk about ourselves and only think about ourselves. Mothers don't do that. They sacrifice. So number one, she is of great value, and she is worthy of praise because she thinks of others. Look at some of the verses that indicate that. Verse 15, she thinks of others because she rises while it is night and giveth meat to her household and a portion of her goods. She'd like to be asleep, but no, she gets up at 3:30 in the morning to start breakfast so the family can have something to eat. Look at verse 18. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good, and her candle goeth not out by night. The greatest definition of a mother in a few words would be, her candle does not go out by night. No, she's still there and still concerned and wants to help her family. Look at verses 20 and 21. Thinking about others, she reacheth her hands to the poor. She stretcheth her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of the snow for her household. All of her household are clothed with scarlet. The very best for her family, because she's thinking of others. Look at verse 27. She looketh well to the ways of her household. She eateth not the bread of idleness. So we praise her because she thinks of others. She is of great value, far above rubies. Second of all, she's worthy of praise because of her high morals. Her high morals, an example. Look at verses 11 and 12. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She'll do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She has high morals. Spoil means, like Matthew 26 and 41, Jesus said, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation, for the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. But mothers are, with their high morals, are a great example to the family, and they're not to be put away by spoil if they're a God-fearing mother, because they live a life whereby they can be safely trusted. Her morals are outstanding. And for those reasons, we give her the word praise. Third of all, mothers are praised because the text indicates they're very industrious. Their work is never done. They're such an example to the family of giving to others. Look at verse 11. When it said there that there is no need of spoil, this can also imply that a mother is such a good steward for the family that she takes care of the household matters with great diligence. I remember a long time ago, one of our elders at Sycamore told me, an older wise brother, he was talking about a certain couple that was in great financial stress, and they were spending a lot more than they were making, and it wasn't me, but it was somebody we were talking about. And he believed that the wife was a big part of the problem because she was not a very good steward of the family income. And he said, a woman can throw more out the back door than a man can ever bring in the front door. A woman can throw out more of the back door than a man can ever bring in the front door. He felt like that was their problem. This husband here of the virtuous mother, he has no need of spoil. She's not a wasteful, high-living kind of a person, but she's thinking of her family and the well-being. So she's industrious. Look at verses 13 and 14. She seeketh wool. She seeketh and flax. She worketh willingly with her hands. Do you hear the descriptions of this hard-working mother? That's why she's worthy of praise. Why, verse 14, she's like the merchant ships. She brings her food from a distance, from afar. Verse 16, she considers a field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. This woman is working hard inside and outside, in the field, in the garden. Verse 19, she layeth her hands to the spindle. Her hands hoe the distaff, making her own clothes and the clothes for her children. Verse 22, she maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple that she has made. She's made it. She is an industrious person. And verse 24, she maketh fine linen and sells it. She's not only providing for her family, but she's making some money for some income for the family. What an example of industry. And then verse 27, she looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. So she is praised for her industry. Why do we praise her? Because she is so rare and priceless. Why do we praise her? Because she has high morals. Why do we praise her? Because she's industrious. And one other thought, we praise her because of her personal attributes and character. Her character. Look at verse 20. We read it earlier, but let's emphasize, she stretcheth out her hand to the poor. Yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. That's her personal character. She thinks about poor people. God's always thought about the poor and cared for them. He always made sure, a part of his instruction for the children of Israel, that they would leave the corners of the field, and any grain that spilled out in harvesting was to be left for the widows and for the poor. The early church immediately attacked the mission of taking care of the poor widows that had been neglected and setting up tables of food and fulfilling those responsibilities. God intended for the church to help the widows indeed and the widows in need. And that is spelled out specifically the age, a widow above 60, and she does not have family to help her. The church must get in there and be of support. 1 Timothy chapter 5. So this dear virtuous mother, her personal character is, she really cares. You care about poor people? God does. God's people should. This dear God-fearing woman does. She reaches out her hands to the needy. She's not just a talker, she's a doer. So that personal character is very outstanding. Look at verse 23. And that's where the reading that Danny did, the good reading about Dorcas was connected to. They were holding up the clothes she made for them. Look at verse 23. Her husband's known in the gates where he sits among the elders of the land. Now there's more to this than first meets your eye, okay? When we do some digging into it, to sit at the gates was a great honor for any man. It meant they were the elders. They didn't have governments like we do, or law and police and such as we have, but they took care of their own matters. And if there was a matter that had to be settled in a civic situation, it would be brought to the elders of the land who sat at the gates. Every day they would sit at the gate and people would bring to them their complaints, their problems, their difficulties, and they were men of recognition and of wisdom, and they would help settle family. They were the judges, if you would. They were the ones that took care of the family arguments or marital situations or children and all those kind of things. It was a great honor for a man if he were to be selected to be one of the elders who sat at the gates. He was wise. He's a good example. She makes all that possible, see? He's got a clean shirt on because she washed it and provided it for him, okay? He looks good because I heard last night about the man that asked his wife about the shirt he put on. He said, "This shirt made me look fat." She said, "No, your belly makes you look fat." But she's got him a good clean shirt on. He looks as good as he can because she's made it possible. See, that's her personal character. Her example is why he's able to sit at the gates. If she was a worldly, lazy, poor example, he would not be at the gates. He'd be one of the ones bringing his petitions to the elders. So he is there because she has set the example by her personal character. It is outstanding. Look at verse 26. In her tongue she opened her mouth with wisdom, okay? And in her tongue is the law of kindness. In her tongue is the law of kindness. The kindness of a God-fearing mother. What a humbling, beautiful description. 1 Peter 3 and verse 4 says that God-fearing women should be of a meek and a quiet spirit, which in the sight of God is of great price. That's a mother. Somebody says, that's her personal character. Somebody says, wait a minute. I remember a few years ago, there was one of those bulletins went around, circulated. It was in the church bulletins of a lot of different congregations about this article, My Mean Mother. My mean mother. I have the meanest mother. way the article went. She didn't have the law of kindness. If I remember it well, now remember that article, they said their mean mother would make sure they always dressed appropriately before they went out and paraded themselves in front of others. Sometimes she'd have to go back and change her clothes. That mean mother would wash the boys' mouths out with soap because they used a bad word. That mean mother said that you couldn't go dating until you were at least 16, and the other girls' mothers would let them date at 14 and 15, but your mean mother said you had to be at least 16, be better at 17 or 18. Yeah. And that mean mother had the right to come and open up your computer at any time, your diary at any time, and to read and go to the chat rooms if she wanted to, and read to the people you're talking to. Yeah, that mean mother did all those things. But the article went ahead to say, you know what? My brother and I have never been in jail because we had a mean mother. My brother and I were top of our class, that mean mother's influence. My mean mother is, the point was the discipline and the training. And so the conclusion of the article was, hey, I'm raising my children like a mean mother too. I'm going to be the same way. Understand the point. There is the law of kindness about this virtuous mother, but her discipline, her leadership, her concern, she will take a stand for what's right. And so she will try to help guide her children about dating, about dress, about the dangers that are out there, the way Satan works through the many temptations of alcohol and drugs and porno and all those kind of things. She's aware, she's knowledgeable, and she's concerned. And yes, she's going to take charge to try to save her children, because that's the most important, you're the most important thing in the world. So call her mean if you want to. It's just that she's concerned, and the results are usually very, very good and positive. Well, verse 27, talking about her character now. She looketh well to the ways of her house, so she eateth not the bread of idleness. How descriptive. You ever thought about bread being idle? And this, that's a good way to. She doesn't eat it though. No, she doesn't eat that bread of idleness. Idle hands are the devil's workshop is true for teenagers, but it's true for mamas and daddies too. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. She doesn't have idle hands. She doesn't eat that bread. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 11, when Paul was writing and describing widows that should be supported by the church, the younger women, widows you need to refuse, they have begun to wax wanton against Christ, and they will marry and having damnation because they cast off their first faith. And withal they learn to be idle, wandering from house to house, and not only idle, but they're tattlers also, and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not to speak. I will therefore that the younger women marry and bear children and guide the house, and give none occasion of the adversary to speak reproachfully. And some are turned aside after Satan. They learn to be idle, and they are busybodies. So this virtuous mother is not, she doesn't eat the bread of idleness. Did you hear all of the description? I mean, she didn't have time for idleness. She's busy working inside the house and outside the house. She's making clothes. She's working in the garden. She's selling things. She is an industrious person who doesn't have time for the foolishness of idleness and what it can lead and get you into. So she's very wise and very good. Her personal character is another reason that we praise her. Well, in conclusion, we notice 3 times that the virtuous mother verses end with a description to give her praise, and she is worthy of it. It would be easy to conduct her funeral because there would be many good things that you could think about to say. Many times through the years, I've been called upon to conduct a funeral for a lady that I didn't know. Usually they just want a preacher, and I'm glad to help the funeral homes out. Sometimes they will give you gas money, and sometimes they don't. It's all right. They usually just want a preacher in these situations. Sometimes they want a preacher that's from the church. But I don't know the people, never met them, don't know their family maybe, or maybe one or two of them vaguely know. And so I try to go to visitation and talk with them and try to learn some good things I can bring out. I don't know this person. I've tried to find out if they're Christian, and I try to find out, tell me some good things. They worked in the garden, their grandmother and grandmother and all the good things that their attributes, share with me, tell me. And I remember asking the lady, I didn't know any of the folks in this situation, I said, tell me something, that I can share about your mother, a good memory or a good thought. She said, Mama liked to watch television and drink beer. And I just sort of stood there and I thought, okay, I'm not going to share that, all right? I'm sort of sad that's the only memory you got of your mother. But that was her way of saying it. I can't go there, so I just started to talk about her flowers. But her garden, her flower, I don't remember. Praiseworthy because of those things that we've looked at this morning. Her funeral would be easy to hold. What about us? We need to work to try to be good examples, and I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on anybody. Can't throw rocks, but all of us need to try to so live our lives that we could follow the wisdom and the pattern of God's Word. And there is in this beautiful description of a virtuous mother, much to challenge our mothers with, but also to challenge all of us to be God-fearing people that would see the wisdom and the goodness of being a child of God. That we could be praised. Give her let her own works praise her in the gates. If she fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Her husband praiseth her. It's right, and it's worthy. This morning you could begin your stewardship, and the very best example you could be by being a Christian mother, being a God-fearing mother, a faithful mother to the Lord. Have you obeyed the gospel? Do you need to do that? Do you need to restore the Lord and get things right in your stewardship and serving the Lord as a God-fearing mother, a virtuous mother? They're hard to find. Who can find one? I tell you, if you find one, the price is far above rubies. Let us work toward being those kind of people of God while we stand and while we sing.